Hello, my name is Chimdi Olwoha, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the hot seat on MCL television. Today, our guest is Lekwa Ezuta. Lekwa Ezuta is the president, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners. It's my pleasure to welcome him to the studio. Lekwa, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
Town planning, Lekwa, has been in Nigeria right from the colonial days. Though it was formerly, the institute was formally formed in 1966 by the records. Are you not bothered that many Nigerians seem not to understand the role of town planning in Nigeria?
Definitely one has to be bothered because lack of knowledge of something leads to resistance and abuse. Because majority of the people lack good knowledge of what town planning is all about, we tend, particularly the policymakers, tend not to pay very good attention to it. These days, the emphasis is now more on revenue generation from town planning instead of the original purpose of town planning, for which town planning is still very relevant today.
So what are the original purposes of establishing the profession in the first instance?
You see, the origin of town planning, you can say, has to do with the Industrial Revolution. At the early parts of the Industrial Revolution, the people who owned the industries did not really bother about where the workers lived. And the workers, because of their little income, tried to stay close to these industrial locations. This led to a lot of overcrowding because they wanted to overcome the friction of space. Stay where I can get to the factory without much problem, without spending so much money. So this led to overcrowding around the industrial areas. And this overcrowding led to a lot of communicable diseases. When it was discovered that it was this overcrowding that led to these diseases, there was now an attempt to reorganize how the people lived in those places. This gradually started as more or less like a health issue. But gradually it evolved to what we now know as town planning. Now, gradually, I can't talk of a particular time it now changed over. You know, the emphasis seems to be more now on how much do people pay to secure a planning approval. How much do people pay to secure planning permit?
But that's what your colleagues do. I mean, it's everywhere in the state in the states in Nigeria.
Yeah, it's because the government itself. The government is not. It's not the town planner that is really responsible for that. It's that the government, like in some states now, the government now sets targets. The government now sets targets. This was a public health issue. This is something that has to do with public interest. We're not supposed to be talking about money because if the people fall sick, it has a lot of adverse consequences on the economy. You spend money treating the person is out of work for a number of days, that affects production. So the idea was to provide conducive environment, provide livable environment for the people to live in. Gradually, we've shifted to how much money do we get from this process. So it's affecting the achievement of the original objectives. You're not talking of how much you're increasing what the person should pay, and at times in the course of trying to meet up with targets, you compromise the standards.
Could that be the reason why we've been experiencing collapse of buildings around? Because the increasing rates of building collapse puts some question mark on professionals in the built environment,
yes,
including the town planners.
Yes. The issue of building collapse. Actually, buildings do not collapse on paper. It's not a fault that can be traced to the approval process. It's more of post-approval. It happens during construction. It has always happened during construction. And going by the history of building collapse in Nigeria, if 100 buildings have collapsed, you find that professionals have been involved in only about 5 of them. Professionals have not been strictly been involved in most of the building collapses. So the professionals themselves are now talking to themselves. How do we prevent this thing? Because we are always being accused. But when it is investigated, you discover that the professional was not involved.
Maybe because of the money, the big money you charge to get things done.
No.
And then people are scared and have to use other people who may not necessarily become professionals.
But then I would put it this way. You want something, you have to pay for it. Everything has a price.
Does it not counter the earlier statement that people you are not placing emphasis on money instead of getting it right?
No. When it comes to offering these professional services, the professionals really sit down and take their time to determine what the amount of money that is due to the professional for rendering professional services. This amount is not, you cannot compare it to when these buildings collapse. It doesn't go more than 10% overall, all the professionals, whatever they will charge, shouldn't go more than 10% of the cost of the building. All the professionals involved. It won't go more than 10% of the cost of the building.
Okay, let's take it this way. Assuming you are to do a bungalow, how much would it cost to take care of the professionals and then a building of say 5 million?
You see,
by the time the person pays the professional, how can that person achieve the goal with the 5 million he has to do a good bungalow?
Well, what you'll be paying the professionals wouldn't be much. It's best he pays, because in the cost, when he engages the services of the professionals will also give him the best. They will even help him cut costs, because there are areas he would have been involved in wastage. But when these things are properly done, he is bound to save costs. Because he is planning. You sit down, you say, I have 5 million to build. The professional should be able to give you a building within that range and still have their fees. Because they'll be, all what they'll be doing will be based on the amount of money you have. The only thing is that you may not, of course, because they are thinking of, they'll be taking into account so many things. So you may not get certain things you think you should get within that 5 million. Because it is trying to get everything within a certain amount of money that leads to compromise in terms of the quality of materials used, in terms of the skills you employ. Because most of the building collapse have been traced to quality of material, the quartz that are being used. Somebody is involved in the erection of 2-3-story building. He wasn't the designer, he wasn't the structural engineer or something, and things like that. At the end of the day, he goes next door and says, we built this house, I built this house. And then you engage his services. That is what leads to building. Part of the causes that lead to building collapse. Another cause is trying to cut corners, quality of materials. We know right now that the quality of materials we have in the market is not as good as what we used to have. That is one aspect of it. Because of cost, people are now producing poor quality materials. Then, of course, the quacks. If an engineer comes, for instance, and sees that the quality of this particular material has been compromised, he might, instead of using what used to get back what he should have originally. But the quack will still see it as this is what. So the engagement of professionals does not necessarily escalate the cost of building. In fact, it may even reduce it because they will look at it properly and know what to be used for. Let me give you an example. People may think, I'm not an engineer, but in the associating with them and so on, people may think that 9 inches block is because it's standard. But there are places the engineer will come and say, I'd rather use 6 inches solid, and it will still serve the purpose. The quack wouldn't know that because he doesn't know the theory behind what he's doing. I'm just using that as an example. So the fees the professionals will charge, I don't think really escalates the cost of buildings. But rather the disadvantages of engaging quacks far outweigh the costs, the perceived costs.
But there are cases where professionals have been engaged and still we had deficiencies in the work delivered.
Well,
because if a building in a building collapse, you have an engineer, you have a town planner, and you have name them, and yet at the end of the day, a building collapses. Even with the input of some of these people.
Yeah, well, like I said,
or are you saying that there are some professionals and there are some other professionals?
Well, yes, there are not necessarily. There are quacks who pass as professionals. For instance, I'm a professional town planner. The moment I deviate to go and start doing what the engineer should be doing, I'm a quack. I'm a professional in a particular field. So if I dabble into another field, I'm a quack there. Same thing. If the engineer starts dabbling into what the town planner is supposed to be doing, he's a quack. I do know that the professional bodies are trying to look into these things, even finding a way of censoring themselves. And of course, any professional that is seen to be involved in a building that collapses, the professional body has a way of dealing with them. So that is why you find, like I said, there are very few cases where professionals have really been involved in building collapse. There are very few buildings that have collapsed, and you trace it and you find that a professional has been involved. Very few cases.
Talking directly to the issue of town planners,
yes.
We see the environment, which is particularly an area, the built environment. You see cases where roads are built today, tomorrow it's no longer there, and you see cases where flood affects a settlement. That's your area.
Yes.
And one begins to wonder, are there town planners in town?
Well, the one of building collapse will leave for the engineers. That is they are tough. So they will give reasons why we are having such cases.
Are you saying the town planners are not involved?
No, the town planners are really not involved because that is construction. We are not talking of construction of the roads. It is the engineer what the town planner does with respect to roads is to determine the alignment of the road. This road has to go from here to that point, this width of the road. Yes, the town planner, that is what we call the right of way. The town planner will do that. But when it comes to the actual design and construction of the road, that is the engineer.
Including the absence of sidewalks?
No, well, if the right of way is not adequate, blame the town planner. But if the right of way is adequate, it is now left for the engineer to say, this is the third portion, the drainage, the walkways. But the town planner should make adequate provision for
So some of the roads we see without drainage, we blame the town planners.
Well, to some extent. But are we really planning? I think that is the first question we should be asking. Are we really planning? We are now more involved in development control than in the actual planning in this country. Because what is planning? Planning is action based on forethought, which means you plan before you take action. Developments are now coming up before we start even thinking of planning. You talk about planning, and the government says, we don't have money. I remember on one occasion when I used to be in the service, and when they said the money was too much for us to plan, I said, well, like they said, you say education is expensive, you try ignorance. We are saying planning is expensive, we are trying planlessness, and here we are. We should really embark on planning, because when we plan before implementation is bound to be cheaper. We are bound to have better results. The environment is bound to be much, much better, because in the course of planning, we would have taken care of a lot of problems that will emanate from environmental factors. For instance, the flood problems we're having. In most of those originally planned areas of our settlements, even in Abahe, you don't have that problem, because a lot of consideration was given to the slope of the land. Yes, to the naked eye, it will seem that Abahe is flat. It's just that the slope is very, very gentle, but it's there. And now those areas that just continue developing like that without planning are the areas where we're having these problems, because people thought that the area was flat. And even if it was that stable land, yes, when it was forest, there is no problem. The rain falls, it percolates. The rain falls, it percolates. There's no problem. But when you start building, you are now reducing the surface area through which rain will percolate. So you start increasing flood water. This should be properly channeled. That is where planning that reflects the slope comes into play. If we plant, taking into consideration the slope, the flood, it will be easy to channel the flood water along the slope, because the flood water will follow the lowest level. It goes along that line till it gets to the natural drainage channels. For instance, in Aba, we should be talking of all the drainage channels emptying into the Aba River. If you don't plan in such a way that these drainage channels will discharge into the Aba River, you already have a problem. You definitely start having areas that are flooded. For instance, let's take Ndiagoro for instance. If we had planned Ndiagoro, the natural thing is that we would have observed the slope from Ndiagoro to Aba River. There must be a slope that's supposed to channel flood water from Ndiagoro to Aba River. We would have preserved that natural slope, and the drainage, the artificial drainage that was constructed, would have followed that slope. It would have been very easy for you to discharge water into Aba River, and you wouldn't have been having problems. Right now, what has happened has happened. We now have a big pond there. with building all over the place. The attempt was made some time ago was to channel the water underground till we get to there. That has not been completed. Until that is done, for me there are two options. Channel the water underground, or alternatively, let's identify the natural slope, the natural drainage channel, and remove all the buildings along that channel, and then channel the water, so that we can recover a large chunk of land. Because right now, it's a kind of saucer, and as we are building, the water slopes into that place, and as more buildings are coming up, the level of flooding keeps increasing. So this is something we could have solved at the planning stage, could have made it very, very cheap. Now it is going to be very expensive. That is why we keep insisting that there is the need to plan beforehand. There are a lot of, we're just using this issue of flooding to illustrate what the point I'm making. There are a lot of problems emanating from our not planning our settlements properly. We are just building. People just cut roads, and yes, those roads are there, but what is the end product now? We're having a lot of problems. Some of the roads are grossly inadequate because the standards were not used. The people were just, let's have a road that will lead. The next person said, let's extend it. But if we were planning, like in the old part of Aba that was planned, I think that should really help us appreciate the need for proper planning. The GRO, the old town, the area we call they used to call African location, or quarters in some places, crown land, whatever, state land. In the case of Aba, I'm talking of the area, Asa Road to East Street, Tongwa Road, and so on. A plant. You are not having much of that problem. You have space for drainage, you have space for everything. Because of the plan, standards were maintained. We have hierarchy of roads. All the roads are not the same size. Azikiwe, for instance, used to be known as a 100-foot road. It's wider than the other roads. But the other roads were supposed to empty into Azikiwe Road, and it collects the traffic. So in planning, we'll take into consideration, we'll have hierarchy of roads, we'll take into consideration a lot of environmental factors, natural factors like the slope of the land and so on. So if you now start building a city that is based on a plan, the product is definitely bound to be different, rather than this, I'll call it organic development. Yes, that is what we had in our villages. But then, even in our villages, there was an element of planning. Even in our villages. Because otherwise, villages would not be looking alike. Every village looks alike. Every Ohafia village looks alike. It's like the other. So it's because they had reasons, I must have to say, they had reasons to do what they did. So now that urbanization is making us have large concentrations of people in particular areas, there is the obvious need for conscious planning.
Okay, there is an obvious need for conscious planning, but that speaks to the need for your institute, the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, to embark on very aggressive advocacy to ensure that planning is done in all parts of Nigeria, because flood and the effects of flood are very evident in virtually all states in Nigeria.
I agree with you. Yes. Possibly because of the level at which we were. We just had small pockets of layouts and things all over the country. But now, our cities are exploding. We are now having these problems. They are now staring us in the face. And we, in the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, are now saying, we have a problem. We are supposed to be providing our people with livable settlements. Now, most of our settlements are not livable.
Most of us.
So,
I will have to take a break there right now. Thank you for that statement, and that will continue with the insight you're about to give in that area when we come back for this conversation to continue. Please stay tuned. The need to know arouses curiosity, and the need to inform drives the media. Politics is a way of life. So, how politics plays out and its complexities form the issues on Hot Seat. Hot Seat. Politics is laid bare by the gladiators. Join us every Saturday by 10 a.m. Hot Seat, the political arena for the political gladiators.
Welcome to MCL Customer Care Service Information. Please listen to the following instruction upon observation of any of the following on your television screen. Bad signal. Kindly check the positioning of your antenna or system wire connection. Initial card failure or card error. Please remove and bring your smart card to the office. Once your subscription airtime expires, program no right or time expired will appear on the screen of your TV set. If you pay for the renewal of your subscription, please leave it on channel 7 for a couple of minutes. Unplug power cord from the socket. For more inquiry, call Ezuta on 08037373985 or Ihoma on 08063820685. Or you can call the technical department 08140181602 or visit our accredited agents around the state. MCL, the word in your home.
It's good to know you are still there with us, and our guest has been Lekwa Ezuta, the President, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, and he's been sharing his thoughts on the provision of a livable environment or settlements in Nigeria. Yes, you were discussing before we went on break the issue of the role your institute is playing to ensure that we have livable environment or settlements in Nigeria.
Yes. Having discovered that there is lack of appreciation of the purpose of town planning, we've now embarked on what I would call advocacy planning, trying to get the people to appreciate the purpose of town planning. We now hold town hall meetings wherever we go. We meet with traditional rulers, we meet with government officials. All what we are doing is now let them know this is the role town planning is supposed to be playing in providing livable settlements for the people. But town planning, among the professions in the built environment, town planning is actually the first profession that leads the way in the chain, in the development chain that transforms raw land, raw undevelopable land into a developed settlement. It is based on the design of the town plan, and the subsoil goes ahead to put his beacons to the market. The engineer now comes to construct the roads that have been defined by the town plan. Before the architects now sets in, to start designing buildings based on spaces created by the town planner, and so on and so forth. So, and the town planner, because he's the first and it is his responsibility, he is to determine what each site is best suited for, based on what it will be used for and the characteristics of the terrain. There are areas that shouldn't be built upon. For instance, if you have a floodplain, depending on the size of the stream, the slope of the land, you determine a floodplain. The town planner would say, no, this area should be a building-free zone, and so on. This should be done before we start building. So we are now trying to let people know this should be the sequence, the way things should go if we want to have livable settlements. We are now doing that because we've discovered the problem has been that of lack of knowledge. Like I said at the beginning, lack of knowledge leads to resistance. Lack of knowledge leads to abuse. Because our people are not appreciative of the role of town planning, they tend to resist it. They associate it with they are coming to take our land. When in actual fact, if they allow planning to take place, their land, the value of their land will definitely appreciate. And well-planned settlements are very attractive to investors. Well-planned settlements are very attractive to investors. And when investors move in, they generate employment. And employment will definitely lead to generation of income, which will lead to improved standard of living. So you find that planning, though there, a lot of people don't appreciate it, has a role to play. If we now start doing it right, we start getting it right, plan before we start development is bound to really come with a lot of advantages. So we are now trying to educate the public. We are having town hall meetings.
How much of this education are you having with government? Because it is clear to me from your explanations that the whole lot of the issue of planning rests with government.
Yes, it rests with government, but the people too are very important. The people clamor for roads, and government starts paying attention to that. People should also clamor for organization of the environment, because you either organize or you agonize. I think that is what is happening. We've not organized our environment, we're organizing over our environment. So the people should also talk to the government, let the people first appreciate that the environment is very important. Then they will be demanding for good environment from the government. Because the government tends to respond more. For instance, when we were talking of master plan for settlements in Abia, for instance, one of the high officials said, are you saying that the governor should spend this kind of money only to present a piece of paper to the people? That the people would rather prefer a gigantic building. They will appreciate what their money has gone into. But if people appreciate the fact that, for instance, we now see Abuja as what do I put it? How do I put it? It's a kind of the ultimate, what a city should look like. What is the basis for that? Because a master plan was prepared for Abuja, and the implementation followed that plan. But like I said, most people don't even see it that way. What they are just seeing, the government engaged the services of Julius Berger, and Julius Berger did that. Julius Berger only built roads they were told to build in the direction in which they were asked to build. They didn't determine the alignment. They didn't determine where each type of structure was to be erected. That was determined by the town planner. Everybody rushes to Abuja. Abuja is nice. So what we are trying to do, like I said, is let the people. We've talked to the government a lot. The government is responding to the demands of the people, the wishes of the people. And these people don't really know what their problems are. So they are demanding for other things. And the government is responding to that. We are now we now want to let the people know, your problem is this, demand for it. So that is why we are reaching out to them.
So how much of this reaching out, let's talk about the Southeast, for instance. How much of this reaching out is going on in the Southeast?
Well, at least for this year, we've done a town hall meeting in Bayelsa. We've done a town hall meeting in Calabar. We've done a town hall meeting in, we've done one in Akwa Ibom also.
These are the South states. I'm talking about the Southeast.
No, we're coming. You know,
yes.
It's the same group, so we're moving. We did that last year in Anambra. So we did that in Anambra.
And from your feedback mechanism, what has been the result of some of these reaching out you've done in terms of the planning of the cities in those areas?
No, well, this is, I would say this is a recent, this level of aggressiveness in reaching out is a recent development. So, but at least the response we are getting in terms of, do they really appreciate what we are talking about, has been very high. Let me not mention, but one of the traditional rulers we met said, oh, I didn't even know the difference between you and architects and so on. Now I know. So instead of going to this group of people for this kind of problem, I should be approaching people for solving this kind of problem.
But why will you spend so much money to prepare a piece of paper that you give to the people? I'm using your words.
Okay.
Why would anybody buy that idea, a piece of paper, in the name of
master plan?
Master plan.
Good. If the person appreciates the usefulness of the master plan, he will know that the amount of money that is being spent for the preparation of the master plan, the value you get from that master plan is worth it. Because if you prepare a master plan, it takes some time, for a lot of labor involved, I would say skilled and professional labor. If you are going to say prepare a master plan for Aba, it might take you 1 year. It won't go anything less than that. From start to finish, it might take you 1 year. A lot of people will be involved, starting from maybe school set holders who will help you gather some data, okay. Experts in data management and all that.
Let's get some benefits from your office as the president of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners. In the Southeast, for instance, because we're using Southeast because that's our catchment area.
Okay.
On the Southeast, how many states have this piece of paper or have produced this piece of paper in recent times?
Not in recent time, Anambra has. Imo, well, we had that for, Imo had for almost all the local government headquarters, except it was unfortunate when we were in Imo, the structure plans were prepared for almost all the local government headquarters except Okigwe, Afikpo, Ohafia, Aba, and one other time I can't remember now. The plans for those 5 places could not go through. There was problem with obtaining the aerial photograph of Aba, Ohafia, Afikpo, and Okigwe. Yes, and one other one I can't remember right now. But the others had limited plans for very limited areas. Then that is what. But recently, it's only Anambra, with the help of the UN Habitat, was able to prepare structure plans for Oka, Anambra, and Oka, Newi, and Onitsha. They have plans for these 3 settlements. Abia has been trying to cue in. That is, secure the services of the UN Habitat to help them prepare the master plans for Aba, Umuahia, and Ohafia as for a start. I'm aware that they would have been here the 25th of July to go into to sign an MOU with the government, but incidentally, just a week or so before that date, one of the leaders passed on. So that disorganized them. And they are now rescheduling it for the 29th of August. You know, they'll be moving, they are not in Nigeria, they'll be moving from Nairobi to Nigeria. So they will be here. Abia State has been discussing with the UN Habitat so that UN Habitat can help because of the cost implications. So they are now trying to get the UN agency, UN Habitat, to help so that the cost can be little bit bearable for them to undertake the master plan for the 3 senatorial headquarters and subsequently continue with the other local government headquarters. So that is the stage at which we are in the southeast. But then there is also the other attempt we are making in the southeast, because the political class talk about economic integration for the southeast region. And we've looked at it, those of us from the southeast who are planners, and we've asked ourselves questions. These economic activities don't take place in the air, they take place on land. So we are coming together to see how we can also provide the other aspects of the economic plan. Because for you to talk of development, there are two sides to it. There is the economic side, there is the physical side. There are two sides of a coin. If you take one side and leave the other side, you're bound to run into a problem. So because of this lack of awareness, you see, our leaders talk about economic integration, economic whatever for the southeast, and nobody's talking about the other side of it. So we've gotten ourselves together. We are trying to see what we can do, because we don't have the resources, at least to give an idea of what the policy direction should be in terms of the physical development of the region.
Well, you were reported to have said sometime in March in your institute's newsletter that there was need for renewal of Nigerian cities, and that there were very old areas where buildings may be older than Nigeria as a sovereign state. What do you mean by this position of yours?
Good. What we call urban renewal. Let's take Aba, for instance. The plans that were prepared for the whole part of Aba, the original this thing, was prepared about 1948. 1948. It's now over 50 years. Things have changed. These plans were prepared when we used to have the night soilmen. We've passed that stage. These plans were prepared when almost all buildings were bungalows. We've passed that stage. And now, because of the standards that were developed then, which we are still using, we're having problems. There were no cars then. You could come into the town and only about 5 people had cars. Now, you have vehicles everywhere. So, between 1948 and now, a lot of things have changed. The right thing would have been for us to have been reviewing the policies every 10 years, every 5 years, to keep pace with what is happening. That has not been done for most of our settlements. So we are using standards for the early 50s to build in this is 2019. How many years now? We should review our plans and come up with new policies which we have to implement. That is basically what, when we talk about urban renewal, we should talk about it. For instance, the Aba, or part of Aba, you now have high-rise buildings. We should have by now had a policy that reduces the coverage of the building you are going to erect on any of those plots. That's what. We could have even started talking about, please let the entire ground floor be reserved for parking. These are issues. Trying to find solutions to problems that have arisen due to the dynamic nature of society.
Okay. The Nigerian Urban and Regional Planning Act of 2004 provides for the establishment of a National Urban and Regional Planning Commission. Some people believe that your institute is doing little or nothing about implementation of that section of the law.
No, I wouldn't agree. The problem has been with the political class. We've been clamoring for it because we know that that is what will solve most of these problems. Yes, we talk of federalism in Nigeria, but are we really practicing that? So you find that everybody looks up to the national body. And now you have a law that says we should have a body, well made during the military era, so it has that unitary element of unitary system in it. The federal should have a national planning commission, a state planning board, a local planning authority, and it says the national planning commission should do certain things, the state should do certain things, the local government should do certain things. Now you find a situation where that federal organ is not there. We've been talking about it, we've been requesting for it. At times we think we're almost getting to a stage where the federal government will establish it. Before you know it, there is change in government and everything goes back to square one. So it's not that the institute, because we know it will solve a lot of our problems. For instance, if we have that body, and that body sits down to now have what I'll call national building standards. The states, for instance, the law itself was made, and the states have been adopting it. The various states have been adopting. They amend it here and there to suit their peculiar circumstances. But it's helping. So if we had that federal body and it starts playing its own role, a lot of problems would have been solved too. Yeah, so it's not that we are not doing anything, but the government has not been very willing.
Well, we are getting some text messages coming in reaction to this program. The first one here says, failing to plan is planning to fail. Developers should try to do a thorough study on their development permit certificate, because therein is a provision for involvement of the town planners at every stages of development. This, when done, will surely curtail the excesses of quacks in the built environment and also reduce building collapse in the country. This is from Ike Elekwachi. Thank you, Ike, for sharing your views on this platform. And this one, with no name, says, kudos to the conveners of this program, but I sincerely want to advise the government to employ the services of a professional town planner into the federal, it's not complete, the text message is not complete. Thank you all the same for sending in this. We appreciate. Yes, you heard from some of our viewers. Maybe you have one or two things to say, otherwise move on.
Let's go on, because I can't think the first person was agreed with me what I said.
Yeah.
The services of professionals should be engaged at every stage of whatever we're doing in terms of construction.
Okay. So you were saying before those text messages were presented that the federal government appears to be reluctant in setting up the commission, urban and regional planning.
Yes, the federal government has been very slow. Where we've been pushing and pushing and pushing. You see, it's now a recurring decimal in all our gatherings. We will meet in Calabar again around the 19th of this month, not town planners, but the Federal Ministry of Works. Federal Ministry of Works has what is known as the National Council on Housing. We'll meet again, and I'm sure one of the issues that will crop up will be the issue of establishment of the National Planning Commission. It's a stakeholders meeting, actually, involving all the stakeholders that has to do with land and housing, federal ministries, state ministries, town planners, architects, surveyors, and so on. We'll meet again. The issue will come up. We will talk about it, because even the national urban policy makes reference to that. We're not even following. At times when we now they talk about the review of the national urban policy. As what are we reviewing? Are we just going to edit what we have? Because we've not implemented what is there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lekwa Ezuta, President, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, for sharing your thoughts and views on issues relating to built settlement in Nigeria. It's good having you on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And for you who has been listening to us or watching us, we thank you for being part of this program. We appreciate your time, and we thank you for being part of it. Until same time next week. Chimdi Oluohan, on behalf of all of us here in the studio, saying thank you and bye-bye.
MCL, the word in your home.